day, Internet. This is DTNS Live for Monday, May 12th, 2025. From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
From Studio 7 in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tom Merritt.
From deep in the heart of Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Daily Tech News Show Live is made possible by its listeners, thanks to all of you, including Mike Akins, Norm Fazekas, Jim Hart, and we got two brand new patrons, Takas and Adriano.
Hey.
Welcome.
We love new patrons. Thank you for joining the flock. We were talking about birds before the show started, so yeah.
Sort of. Yeah, we were talking about chicken.
They're in flocks, right?
They are birds.
They do flock together.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone, to DTNS Live, the show where we discuss the tech news and a little other, just kind of fun things to help us all understand what's going on in life a little bit better. How's everybody doing? Justin Robert Young, let's start with you.
Oh, I'm doing phenomenal. I had to miss last week's show because of jury duty, but what they have taken away from me in terms of freedom, they have gifted me in terms of tenacity for tech news.
That is a fair exchange. In fact, so fair, James Glazer just paid $4 for a super sticker on our YouTube.
How about that?
Score.
How about that?
Yeah, thank you, James.
We're making friends already. Roger,
jury, did you feel like your jury duty last week was worth it?
No.
I listened to your PX3 summary of it, and it sounded like it was an important issue that you were weighing in on.
It was not important, and I will have more to say on Great Night. I hope to discourage anybody from picking me for a jury ever again by how much I'm going to talk about this case publicly.
Fantastic. Okay, that's a not miss Great Night then, for sure.
I'm into it already. Roger Chang, I know you're not in your normal spot. How's everything going?
It's going all right. I can complain. Definitely.
We all
probably
can
the show would be over.
We're
but
good at that.
I have plateaued at a level that's perfect for the show.
Yeah. Family stuff. You got family stuff. Yeah. Hang in there, buddy.
It happens. But good to see you. Glad to have you here. Tom Merritt, how are you doing?
I'm finally coming over the hill of this stupid cold that I got. I don't even know if I got it in Vegas, but it's now reached the sinus stage, which I know from Joe's experience of the same cold means I'm in the home stretch now.
Almost there.
Oh, because it went from just sort of like, I can't get it out to now it comes out.
Yeah.
Not
it's
to
all
be too,
it's moving out of the cough into the
waves.
head. Yeah.
So
yeah.
no longer in the chest, but in the face.
Yeah. Hit me in the face, please. It helps.
Tom's like, please, I've had a cold for 2 weeks now and literally hit me in the face. We're not going to do that today, but we are going to check the news, starting with the quick hits.
Many tariffs between the U.S. and China will be reduced for 90 days starting Wednesday, but not the cheap stuff. Axios reports the U.S. has not rescinded the 120% tariff on low-value imports under $800, despite that new trade deal. That's the de minimis exemption. It was eliminated. It's either 120% or $100 per package, and starting June 1st, that flat fee goes up to $200 per package. This affects discount platforms like Shein and Temu, of course, with Temu halting direct shipments from China as a result. So they're warehousing stuff in the U.S. now.
Amazon's ad-supported Prime Video now reaches 130 million U.S. users, so says the company, which is up 15 million from last year. Ahead of its 2025 upfront video that they do the upfronts every year, Amazon is rolling out AI-driven ad tools, including scene-aware ads, shoppable content, and interactive formats to boost sales on and off the platform.
This is the biggest story of the day, everyone. Google changed the G logo.
No.
Are you okay? Is everybody all right?
I'm not okay.
The G logo.
I'm still trying to
It's nothing but a G thing.
It is. That's well said.
Thank you, Justin. Good work.
And it's the first time they've done that since 2015. Here's the big change. There's now a gradient blend between the four signature colors. If you want to see it for yourself, The new design is live on iOS and Pixel devices. It has not yet rolled out to the rest of the web or Android phones.
I can't even imagine how much a design firm got paid to, with a straight face, suggest that to Google.
Yeah.
When I put
want-
the
I want to
story
be that
into the
design
show
firm.
this morning, I was like, you know what? This is kind of a throwaway, but there are people out there who care
No,
about these things.
it went in briefing too, because everybody's like on fire about it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Well, it sort of in a way signifies, I think, the defiant end of flat design in a lot of company logos.
Wow, you went to
A
design
real
school.
take. A
It
real
was
take.
already
Yeah.
flat. It was already very flat. Anyway.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's now moving away from that. People
Yeah.
like
Roger's
I
showing
want
his
some
designer
dimension
chops.
in my logo.
Yeah. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman reports that Apple's upcoming iOS 19 is supposed to be more stable and less glitchy than previous releases. That sounds great to an iOS user. The update is expected to feature major design changes also, and AI enhancements, and Apple is prioritizing functionality and reliability after past criticism over bugs and broken features.
General Motors hired Sterling Anderson. No, not the guy from The Matrix. That's a different Anderson. This Anderson is the co-founder of autonomous vehicle company Aurora. You might have heard them regards to trucking. Also former Tesla autopilot director. Sterling Anderson will now become the new chief product officer for GM starting June 2nd. He'll oversee GM's entire product line. That includes gas, electric, hardware, software, and user experience, and report directly to President Mark Royce.
Homework help company Chegg, that's Chegg with 2 G's, is laying off 22% of its workforce, or about 248 employees. The company cited failing web traffic, declining subscribers, down 31% to 3.2 million. So still, I mean, you've got quite a few, but they're falling. And a 30% revenue drop as reasons for the cuts. It also plans to shut down its U.S. and Canada offices, expecting to save up to $110 million by 2026. Speaking of price cuts or inflation, who even knows these days? The Wall Street Journal reports that Apple is considering raising iPhone prices for the iPhone 17 lineup expected this fall, but wants to avoid citing tariffs as the reason. The company is, at least at this point, not talking about tariffs as that reason, despite ongoing trade tensions and shifting production to India and Vietnam from China. A lot of stuff has been going on with lots of tech companies. Apple is no exception. The company may attribute the increase to new features like a rumored ultra-thin iPhone Air. So I wanted to go around the horn. I mean, if you're looking for a new iPhone this fall, I don't know, maybe this falls into, what you're thinking of budget-wise. But more so, what do you, if you want something and you think that something is the best version of the thing that you want, tech-wise, what is your ceiling for paying for something?
Yeah, it's not like a hard number for me. It's more of a, what's in my bank account? What can I deduct from my taxes as part of this company? Which is probably not a
That's a
concern
big
that
part of
everyone
it,
has.
yeah.
And then, is it doable? What is it compared to, right? Like, is this the price of a laptop for a phone? Yes, it is. It is getting to that point. And I'd say we're starting to stretch the outer limits on these flagship phones, not just Apple, of what I'm able to pay. I only was able to afford to get the Pixel the Pixel Fold because there was an existing discount and I could send my old phone in and stuff like that to bring the price down. But $1,700 for that, I would not have been able to swing, or I would have been able to do it, but I don't know that I would have swung it. So it's,
Well, and
there's
that's kind
an
of where I'm
example.
going with this. I'm not trying to be like, hey, everybody,
Yeah,
what do
yeah.
you have in your bank account? Let's talk about how rich we are. No, I mean, and I'm, very much on the other side of that. But yeah, something like, does this make sense for work? Can I, is there a tax benefit that I might, be able to deal with later on? What is the price point where you just say, I'm walking away? Justin, what do you think?
Well, I've been a volunteer to pay for my iPhone monthly. I am on their subscription plan. So the benefit of that is I just get a new iPhone every year, and I am able to write it off since I do this show, and having a flagship phone that allows me to use the kind of technology that people want to talk about and give a honest understanding of it is part of what I do for a living.
Yeah.
But, you know, I would say, you know, for me, when you start to get to the point where you could buy a new laptop, then, and I mean like a higher end laptop, like a new MacBook or something like that, that's where you start to squint at the price a little bit.
Yeah. When it went above $1,000,
Yeah.
I got squinty. I also think like I would be shocked if they didn't raise the price this time, because they did not raise the price last time. And they
Yeah.
tend to raise the price by $100 every couple of 3 years or so. So, you know, given all the turmoil and things around stuff, a price jump of $100 on some of the models, maybe not even all of the models, is not unexpected.
Yeah, it does bring up an interesting conversation about whether, I mean, the price, as you mentioned, Tom, has gone up on iPhones consistently since the introduction of the product. But there is this very interesting dance of, okay, well, how much is the price of this going up because of, you know, tariff issues, right? Now we have the détente with China, so theoretically some of that should be lowered. But is the confusion, where does that factor in? Does it all come out in the wash? And more specifically, from the point of view of from a company, do you want to advertise that? I would submit that for a company like Apple that does rely on decisions that are made by the government, that there'd be a few reasons why they would not want to say, oops, don't blame us, tariffs.
It is. I'll say that whatever the price is, it needs to fill a need that I can't get anywhere else. Right? If I get this particular phone, it does.
You could say that about a lot of luxury
but-
brands, right?
well, that-
It's
but
like
that's-
the luxury brand is
Rogers,
like, well,
Rogers got a high bar. Rogers got a very
but-
high bar for what is a need.
Well, so there's a certain thing what people consider high price to be luxury, and that's not always the case. For example, if I get like a full frame Canon R5 or something, and I get a couple of like 200, 300 millimeter like L lenses, I'm gonna use and I'm doing more than just bird watching with it. I'm shooting sports. They're very expensive, and oftentimes people associate with a level of luxury, but it does perform at a much greater level than what you would be able to buy at a consumer level. And so I'm willing to pay the $25, $35, $5,000 for the gear, because it's how I would make my living. I need to have the equipment in order to give clients the best possible picture so I can get more clients down the road. If it's something where it's just like, hey, I just always wanted an iPhone and it's $1,500, I would probably go look on the used market for something that's 2 or 3 years old.
The iPhone 16 starts at $799. It's the Pro that gets above $1,000. The Pro Max is the one that starts at $1,199.
yeah. I mean, I have a Pro Max. I like it. It's the 15 model, not the 16. Because I don't upgrade every year anymore, because I'm like they're nice. Just unless I'm like flexing or otherwise like somebody else is paying for it, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But it's a great phone, but it is expensive. It is.
Yeah.
So
and the 15 Pro Max also cost $1,199 because they didn't raise the
Yes.
price between the 15 and the 16.
Yeah,
That's not cheap.
This is not a cheap phone. So I'm like, all right, at what point does Apple go? What do we get to? Where people, like you were talking about, Roger, like say, I have other options
Well,
for also really nice phones.
totally reminds me about the debate going around in the PC hobbyist circles about the price of GPUs. I mean, if you want a decent performing GPU you can play the latest games with, you're spending at least $500. And so there's always been this incremental cost raising of costs on GPUs over the past decade, but this latest jump has been a lot for people to stomach. If you're looking at top end, you're looking at $1,200, and that's, people are debating, I really love gaming, but do I love gaming for $1,200, or do I go for a cheaper option because I don't make it, unless you're a streamer, right? Unless you make your living on YouTube streaming gameplay and talking over it. Most people really can't. I mean, unless they're minted, justify that cost outlay.
Yeah. And that's where these prices will start to come down, is if you get too many people saying, you know what, I'll just get the cheaper one, or I'll go elsewhere, or I'll hold off for another year. The longer that happens, the more pressure to keep that price from going up happens.
The reality of that is not dependent on the quality of the phone. It is dependent on the amount of people with money. And so, like, when will the prices hit a ceiling? When we're in a recession. That's when they will hit a ceiling.
Well said. Over the weekend, the U.S. fired the Register of Copyrights, Shira Perlmutter, leading to some thinking it was because of the publication of a report on how copyright affects the training of generative AI. Tom, this sounds complicated. Let's talk through it.
Yeah, I feel like the firing part of this is what's getting all the attention, and it's probably coincidental. And we'll talk with Justin a little more about that. But it's not unusual for a new U.S. presidential administration to clean house, and certainly not unusual for the current administration to clean house. So I don't think you need to hang it on this copyright and artificial intelligence report. But I know a lot of people are like, well, what was in this report? Because some people are waving it around saying, this says that big tech can't use copyrighted material to train. And that's not what it says. The report is part 3 of a report on copyright and artificial intelligence, specifically about generative models. It was released early, quote, in response to congressional inquiries and expressions of interest from stakeholders. It says a final version will be published in the near future without any substantive changes expected in the analysis or conclusions. And essentially, it states all the cases where fair use might apply and where it might not. It does not seem to come down hard on one end or the other. Here's the nut graph from the conclusion of the entire 113-page report. It says, the office believes government intervention would be premature at this time. Rather, licensing markets should continue to develop, extending early successes into more contexts as soon as possible. In those areas where remaining gaps are unlikely to be filled, alternative approaches, such as extended collective licensing, should be considered to address any market failure. That doesn't sound like someone taking on big tech to me. What about you, Justin?
No, it doesn't sound like that, Tom. It sounds like a pretty well-reasoned, measured, if even kind of hands-off take. It's not suggesting that they seize the means of generative production because there has been a malicious lack of copyright compliance. And just to go back to it, because I don't think it can be underlined enough, on a show like this that does its best to eliminate fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and take away the all too often desire for us to go off on our own little mind maps when it comes to fragments of data. People get fired from administrative roles when it changes hands within parties, when it changes hands between parties, and there is a specific mandate right now that the administration that is currently in the White House sees it as its charge to fundamentally reshape where the directives of the federal government are. So the idea that there was a change here, not controversial, or at least not odd. But unusual. I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Like, I've having read these quotes, I don't know where. I think people are taking a logic leap to say that this is anything other than just a layout of where we are and where we could go.
Meredith Rose from Public Knowledge called it 113 pages of, well, it depends.
And I think and by the way, I think that's probably where we should be right now. You know, the biggest reason why we have the conversations that we have around copyright and generative AI is that it's very, very popular. And there's always going to be big questions about it. I think that you have seen appropriate actions taken by the biggest companies that are leading in the frontier models. It's not like they have said that they are beyond the concept of licensing. And there's a reason why companies like Google have an advantage, because they have a lot of data that they don't need to ask anybody for. They have been giving it away for free, so you could put it on there so they can trade off stuff like that. And I don't know. I don't think that this, despite the desires of some, is a clarion call for anything other than kind of the messy situation that we've seen.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty good overview of the fair use cases. If you're interested, it's a good read for that sort of thing. I don't think it's trying to propose any changes to law, so it's not trying to take legislative action, which would be out of the bounds of the Copyright Office. It's interpreting law. It also clearly says in multiple places that this is all for the courts to decide. They're the ones who interpret the laws, so this is what we think the law has said, but courts will have to make those decisions case by case. But I liked this particular paragraph here. The office expects that some uses of copyrighted works for generative AI training will qualify as fair use and some will not. On one end of the spectrum, uses for purposes of non-commercial research or analysis that do not enable portions of the works to be reproduced in the output are likely to be fair. So they're saying, if you're not trying to undermine the marketplace for the original and you're making sure that your model won't put out the original, that's a fair use for training. There's no problem there. On the other end, it says the copying of expressive works from pirated sources in order to generate unrestricted content that competes in the marketplace when licensing is reasonably available is unlikely to qualify as fair use. So they're saying, if you go and you illegally obtain the copyrighted material and then create a piece of software that its intent is to put out the copyrighted material and then try to compete with the copyrighted material, well, of course, that would not be a fair use. I don't even know if we have any examples of that being done, but that seems pretty uncontroversial to me.
Yeah, that would cleanly fit into current understandings and definition of fair use.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't know if there's much else to say about this, but I know I was seeing headline after headline after headline generated by this morning, and I figured people would probably say, Tom loves talking about copyright. Let's check out DTNS.
It's also, sort of like, ooh, fired the head of copyright. Like, what does this mean? Well, there's more to it. So.
If you have more questions about this, though, I'm available in our Discord. You can go and link your Discord to your Patreon account if you want to join our Discord. It's patreon.com/DTNS.
All right, Justin, New Scientist has a story about an AI model that has been trained on 57 million NHS records in Britain. So what can you tell us about this?
I'm glad you asked, Sarah. The LLM model Foresight was trained by the medical data of 57 million people in England's National Health Service. Creators claim that the model could help doctors by predicting disease and future hospitalization rates. Other researchers feel the use of a scale of NHS data presents concerns around privacy and data protection concerns. It is very important to note that this is anonymized data. So it raises a few questions of exactly, A, where do we want AI to be a part of our medical diagnostic system and how we interact with our healthcare professionals broadly, but also if it is good and it is something that we want, to go back to our conversation about where these records come from, how comfortable are we with even anonymized health records, our most precious records, being used to train?
And if I understand this right, Foresight is a model created by researchers, and they're using it in an academic lab. It's not publicly available. It's
No.
not a business model or anything. I think a lot of people see this headline and might say like, "Oh, some company's trying to monetize it." This is purely for research.
I will add, considering
point.
the speed of this field currently,
Yeah.
yet.
Sure. But it's not like Foresight is out there and you can download it on your on your phone right now.
No.
Yeah, I think that makes a difference.
Well, so I guess my question is, all right, so anonymized data on lots of people in a particular region, great in theory for a lot of healthcare people who want to make us all, do better. But then privacy stuff. I mean, it's. I feel like this is like the push and pull of a lot of AI. I'm using air quotes right now. Is what's going on with people being like, is it, am I giving up privacy rights in order to help, the greater good? And other people saying, well, no, that's not what that's not what's going on. Companies are just trying to, make you healthier. And I think that the companies trying to make you healthier that's a great way to look at this, for sure. But I think there's, again, that push and pull comes into play.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about what they're doing here, right? These are researchers. These are academics who are, have been given responsible access to the data, to the database. And they're saying, let's take that database, de-anonymize it, put it into a training database for an LLM so that LLM can look at this data and then we can see if the LLM is good at diagnosis, is good at predicting health trends. As far as I understand it, what they're doing here is solely related to COVID-19 at this point, because there's some looser laws about COVID-19 research in the UK that they can operate under. But they would like to move it out to other things. And that's why this conversation is happening, because the laws get more strict. But these are people who could see the data, and they're putting it in an LLM where it's harder to see the data. BioCal pointed out that you can sometimes identify people from anonymized or de-identified data. And specifically with healthcare, that's something you could be able to do because there's things that are very specific to us that are not the same for other people. But you would have to work harder to get that out of an LLM than you would to get out of a regular database.
Yeah. I had a conversation once with somebody from the New England Journal of Medicine, and specifically talking about AI diagnostics. One of the things that he said was that when it came to specific patient diagnosis, and this is not necessarily what we are talking about in this case, but in general, something that AI is good at when it comes to health stuff, is that it is a cold reasoning model for what is oftentimes a blind spot for doctors who are usually trained, and these are his words, when they hear hoofbeats to think horses and not unicorns. And so they will almost always, a human doctor will always assume that that your ailment is something that is not the crazy rare disease, because they are always going to believe that the numbers will mean that it is likely to be something more common.
Because
AI does not suffer from that.
They've looked at numbers. Like most
Exactly.
of the time, it's like your gastrointestinal thing is not cancer.
But
Sometimes
what happens
it is,
when
but mostly
the person,
it's not.
But what happens when the person who actually has the rare disease comes by? They are probably going to be told more often than not that it is not what the thing that they have. And that is something that we've seen repeatedly. The most eye-popping cases of people either diagnosing themselves or being diagnosed by doctors with these AI tools is that they are able to pick out the rare disease with a more definitive efficiency than a human doctor.
And you need this kind of research to happen to do that. I think it's healthy to have this kind of conversation about where that research goes in the future, but you need to be able to enable it.
Yeah.
Put it that way. And there are ways to enable it safely.
And then the next question is is this something for which you can reasonably create synthetic data for? So a lot of what we have seen now with some of the models that have been created is that data means a little bit less than we might have thought it before. It is easier to learn and get better at responses and empathy if you create specifically synthetic data that is the best, most nutritious part of trying to train a model. Is that possible
You're
with something
like
like
pulling
this?
the human biases out of the data type thing?
No, not pulling the human biases per se, but just the old thought used to be with AI that the ideal would be to feed it the entire internet. And so if you give it everything on the internet, it is going to be that much better because it is able to understand every nuance of everything that's ever been said.
Turns out that's chaos.
Well, it's also not possible right now in terms of what you would need to train these models. And what we have found is that you don't necessarily need that much data. In fact, you've seen a lot of movement on very, very small models that aren't trained on a lot, but they're able to respond with a great accuracy because they're trained on the right data. And so creating synthetic data that pushes you in that direction has been something that we have seen more and more over the past, probably year and a half. But is that possible when it comes to something as specific as medical data? Or do you really need to have a absolutely photographic picture of the way that humans, age and get sick and get healthy?
Somebody has to have access to the real data in order to see if the training on the synthetic data does as well as the model trained on the real data. So, there needs to be responsible ways to make that happen, like the one we're talking about with Foresight. I think it would be great if there was something like differential privacy, which Apple has worked on with some of its AI publications, where they say we mix in fake data, synthetic data with the real data. And there are ways to do that where you get as good of response, if not better response from the training as well. That helps keep the de-identified data from being teased out. And then there's filters and things you can do to stop it cold as well.
Roger, do you want an AI doctor?
You're muted, Roger. So we can't hear you right
Maybe
now.
that was on purpose. He's like, nope, don't want to
He's
weigh
like,
in.
"Let-
So
this is-
no, it's I apologize. No, it's one of those things where yes, but even if it were to have all the information, you would still want to kind of have a cross reference, at least on experience. There have been several instances where people I've known have been diagnosed with something. And the other portion of it was missed entirely, and so the full picture was not there because there were certain, not just assumptions, but either because the professional was either pressed for time and had to get through the appointment as quickly as possible. Some concerns or information was just like, not important, which in fact it turned out to be very important. And as long as there's a way, when that information, so it gets processed by AI, there's just a follow-up like they do in a hospital where you have test results, goes through one set of hands, and then it gets either reconfirmed or then just looked over by a second pair of eyes to ensure that everyone's seeing the same thing and it's not necessarily just a numbers or like, this is percentage-wise, this is the most likely case, or percentage-wise, this is the most, this will probably be the unlikely case.
I mean, the whole idea with helping predict, situations that we all have to deal with, where a doctor, well skilled in their craft, I'm not saying the doctor is not doing their job to the best of their ability, but anything that can help see stuff, especially in sort of early stages of diseases. I mean, I have quite a bit of experience in this realm. That is. I don't want it to give me a false positive, but I'm 100%. Let's do this. I think doctors and medical professionals who really care about this stuff need to need to embrace these sorts of tools. It's the only way that we're going to see things earlier and often.
I would agree with you, and especially when it comes to situations like that where you feel symptoms that might not even be something that you would go to the doctor for. If you had a portal that your healthcare professional had access to, but you felt comfortable enough talking to, saying, now all of a sudden all of that is time stamped. You could see that, how often that you've complained about a same or similar thing. You can submit pictures or videos that would show in a greater detail exactly what stuff is, and then get real time reaction to stuff that then could be augmented by a human. I honestly think that stuff like that not only would be a standard of care, that it would be revolutionary for probably half of the planet's population that does not have the same kind of access to regular healthcare, but also for the Western world that theoretically does. We feel shame, or we are busy in terms of going to talk to medical professionals. If we're able to do that in a less friction-filled way, then I think it will result in, quite honestly, save lives.
I think the portal idea is actually a really good one, because one of the things that always annoys me is trying to get my primary physician, but also the specialists to have and operate from the same set of information. Oftentimes, I am physically bringing, these are my test results. These are like it's not that I'm not against giving my data to them, but it's just like shouldn't you have this? Shouldn't you be able to look like, oh hey, this is what
the whole sharing test records. You think it would just be way more seamless?
Yeah, and the problem
and maybe
is
that's a U.S. problem, but
it could very well,
maybe.
but it's very much of like they make a diagnosis on the information they have, even though there is a much wider body of your information. And if AI could either manage it or just comprehensively dude, when you check this guy out, this is what you're going to be. These are all the things that they've done. These are all the tests that they've done, and these are all the results as of last week.
Well, as a Kaiser patient, I will tell you, it's good to be in network for almost everything, and yet, they still mess it up. Healthcare is not perfect. I think
No,
it's run by humans.
That's the easy takeaway from this. But yeah, we're at least talking about other alternatives to make it better. So there we are. All right, Roger, many people are hoping for some sort of a revolution in the materials that we use to build homes, build structures, stuff that, is meaty and you can use it and feel like you can trust in it. Seems like somebody has done this and it's coming to the market. So, what's the latest?
Yeah, so in 2018, Liang Bing, who a material scientist at the University of Maryland, developed a process that would enable the fibers or the cellulose fibers in wood to bond to the hydrogen together at a much higher rate, thereby increasing its tensile strength. It's estimated to be anywhere 50% more stronger than steel, for about a strength of weight ratio about 10 times better, which basically means wood that is strong as steel but doesn't have to weigh the same amount in order to carry the same load. And why this is so beneficial is that, at least in North America, like 90% of the residential structures we build are built with wood, because it's the most abundantly available material that we have. But it's not just being strong. It's also, let me wind that back real quick. The technology was then honed, so instead of taking a week, it would take a few hours to complete this process, and that technology was licensed over to a company called InventWood. Now, InventWood claims that the timber that they use or create from this process is both Class A fire safety rated, highly resistant to flame, so you won't just go up straight to a flaming wreck in an instant, but it's also resistant to rot and pests, so that means fungal rot, termites, other wood pests like wood ants, anything that would eat away at the wood. And if you're a homeowner, you know how much how much time you spend to make sure that doesn't happen, either on pest control,
Yeah.
or treating your wood and all that.
Yeah, putting the party tent over your house and having to live
Yeah.
somewhere else
Having
for a
the
couple
Breaking
weeks.
Bad guys cook meth in your couch.
And it's not even the house itself. It's like your structures, like your fence, your deck, your anything made
Yeah.
out of wood. And what's so great about this is, oftentimes when you, for example, I recently got a new fence, and they said, you should probably go with vinyl because it's pest resistant, won't rot, doesn't rust. It's great when in an exposed environment, but it's also like 20-25% more expensive than wood.
Is it?
Well, depending on the wood you get, but typically, yeah. Although that was this earlier this year's prices. Don't quote me on today's prices.
Is InventWood going to be cheaper though?
Well, and so that's the thing. It is still too early to tell if this is one of those things where you go to Home Depot and say, I'm going to buy this instead of. But if you're building a home, you're more likely going to be building it out of timber than out of steel. Steel is definitely an option, so is a stone. But if you live in earthquake country, timber is what you want. And I see this as being a boon because now the homeowner doesn't have to worry about as many things, right? I haven't treated my house yet for termites, so I got to make, I need to pay for that because I pay for that every year. And they just spray down my house to make sure that the wood's poisonous. But it's also a toxin, and I got to keep my kids in for like 4 hours after it's been sprayed so they don't get any on them or in the house. There's all these things that this suddenly alleviates, and most of that is hassle with dealing with the issues of having a wood structure.
Yeah, it sounds like InventWood's going to do skin first, not build, like beams and stuff. Does that make it more decorative?
That just means it's the exterior veneer. So you could definitely do siding. You could definitely do decking.
So it's wood with wood siding.
I mean, that's what we have now. They just that's what it used to be
just
called,
planks or whatever. Yeah.
And then someone decided that they could use aluminum, and they sold it in the 80s on TV.
Now
they use.
There's
use
definitely
vinyl.
a group of folks who are sort of like old wood. That's the best. Pre-finished. All that stuff is like okay, fine.
But this is the thing. That stuff is super expensive. So back in the early 20th century, at least along California, all the old growth redwoods were cut down to build homes, which is great for me because my house is built out of that. But if you're building it today, you're probably using timber that's been grown over 4 years. So there's a density to wood that they call heartwood, and that's the densest part of the tree because it's been around so long and it's been compressed. Mm-hmm. Makes it really hard for termites and other things to eat into it and fungus. But if you're building a new house and if you have OSB, decking or siding on it, it's probably not, and it's going to be a lot more not unresistant to a lot of pests that people would normally deal with especially if you live in a.
Well, they said compressing the material also concentrates the color, so it's going to look nice too.
That's the other thing. There's so many benefits to this process. I'm hoping it's something that can be done at scale because currently the way we deal with
why does
lumber,
it make it look nicer?
Because you get that darker, rich hardwood looking color that you were talking about.
I see.
Unless you like blonde wood, and then you'll probably have to.
Well,
do
yeah.
So it would be super, super strong and also have that rich brown kind of finish.
It would be like the old oak desk that your grandfather had, but you didn't have to sit around and wait for the oak tree to be 25 years.
And it's going into mass production
cool.
this summer for the first time, so that we're on our way. This isn't just in the lab anymore, which is exciting.
I don't know. Maybe I'm a dork, but it's one of those homeowner things. If the next project I do, I'm going to use this, or I'm going to see if someone supplies that because that's
the good kind of dorkiness, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I'd be very curious to see how well it withstands to some of the disaster scenarios or
that's the big question mark. What is its longevity? In 25 years, is it still the same, or has it weathered not as well.
Does it
Oh, that's
decompress?
interesting because
Yeah.
it's impossible for us to even know. Like
Right.
there's plenty of case studies for how we have dealt with a lot of other stuff. If even just because it's existed for that long, this is going to be new. So anybody who does
Yeah.
it, anybody who builds anything with it in the first 25 years is going to be a case study for what the reasonable expectation of what it's going to look like is.
And environmentally, the benefit is that, hey, you're no longer using as much cement. You're not using as much concrete, which is very carbon intensive to produce. You can also, if they can get into, if this gets as far where they become structural members like beams, you could theoretically build a high-rise timber building, which, for the longest time has been a no-go because after like the fifth floor, it becomes a little suspect.
It sags.
A little wobbly?
Sags a little. Yeah, a little
Yeah.
wobbly.
Yeah, don't want an earthquake on
Yeah.
that.
You
on
don't
that,
want to put it,
on that
no heavy
high-rise.
desks.
Pile of sticks.
Yeah, but they are talking about making I-beams out of this stuff. So you're right.
Three Little
Like,
Pigs comes to mind.
I-beams, joists, anything
Yeah.
that cross members. I mean, that'd be great. I mean, there could be all sorts of issues in the future, but I'm pretty excited. I think it's a pretty sweet.
I cannot wait to see the all wood building erupting into the skyline of San Francisco within the next 30 years.
I mean,
which
people
company
working on 'em.
will lease the headquarters that's all wood?
Oh man, I don't know, but it's probably something that's bankrolled by private equity.
It'll probably be called like the timber lot or something.
The Timber
Timberland.
Bros
Oh, huh.
Yeah.
REI.
or REI. All right, everybody, let's check out the mailbag.
Yeah, thanks to Andrew for writing in, and apologies to Andrew that I edited a little bit the wonderful thoughts you sent just so that we can get them across to people a little better. But Andrew's been a police officer for 22 years, 18 of those as a deputy sheriff, and had some thoughts on the impact statement, AI-generated impact statement that we talked about on Friday. Andrew says, I have witnessed hundreds of impact statements, cases involving simple assault, theft, and burglary, to first-degree murder with multiple victims. After listening to your discussion 3 or 4 times, I watched the video posted on NBCnews.com, and I did not like it. The language as written by the deceased's sister repeatedly speaks as if this is the deceased speaking, rather than as a representation of the victim speaking on behalf of his sister and how this incident has impacted her. As you all acknowledged, the generated video and audio is not the words of the deceased victim. I have no issue with the video of the victim as he is speaking, but when the generated video and audio takes over, I feel it is improper because of the language as written by the victim's sister. For me, it comes down to the fact that these are not the victim's words.
Yeah, Andrew, I feel like I'm more or less with you on this one. You working in law enforcement, you know a lot more about victim statements than I do. But yeah, it's a slippery slope, I guess.
Yeah, and it's probably, as we talked about, I think some people brought it up, it probably just won't be as impactful now as because it's happened. And so maybe it won't catch on. But I think Andrew makes a good point of these statements are supposed to come from the victims. They're supposed to be about the impact on the victim of the crime, and having it put in the words of someone who isn't there anymore.
Well, and
isn't the
impact
same thing.
statements also come from the family of the victim. I mean, that happens quite a bit. An impact statement can come from anybody who, is designated to be able to talk in a court of law about something. But if the victim themselves is deceased, obviously that cannot happen. You can do it on behalf of somebody, but to have it be like, I'm the victim, let's talk about it. That I think is something that Andrew is feeling a little icky about. Remember, you can send your comments to feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. Not everybody has to, write about something this dark. But Andrew, we really do appreciate your feedback, and we appreciate the feedback of everybody on the show. So thanks to Justin Robert Young, who always brings just good stuff. Just good stuff. What's going on when you're not with us?
Well, if you want to know a little bit more about artificial intelligence, you can download the Attention Mechanism podcast, which hopefully we have not had an episode out in the last few weeks because Andrew and I have been very busy with a few things, but we will hopefully be back today, and we will have a new episode out for you because the world of AI, my friends, it never stops.
Really
Not these
doesn't.
days. No, it does not. Well, let's check the titles people have been submitting over at dtns.showbot.tv. What do you say? Come on, everybody. Let's go look. Nick with a C leading the votes right now. Company changes design. Internet is outraged. This is,
Tale
I
as
guess,
old
we're
as
at
time.
the Google G logo. Larry in Atlanta with AI killed the copyright star. Ryan in Minneapolis. About an hour of Well, That Depends. 113 pages. Easily an hour to read. Does AI have copyrights? From DJ Bastic. I don't know. Any others catching y'all's eye? Nothing but a G thing from DJ Bastic.
I was going to
as
say
well.
that was the one that stuck out to me, DJ Bastic. Nothing but a G thing because Google changed their logo. Yeah.
DJ Bastic with lots of good ones.
Such a big story.
New wood, now
world.
termite free.
That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
New wood, who
as a
dis?
person who's not, I don't have termites in my house. I don't think right now. I would like to continue not having them. So any new wood that comes in, termite free. Sounds good.
I love DeBastic's iPhone is terrific.
Tariffs. I get it.
Terrific.
JPEG 84 AI Foresight into our health.
Oh, because the Foresight project.
Ah,
Clever.
yes.
JPEG 84 is good with that. Ryan in Minneapolis, LLM, large language medicine. Yeah, nobody? I thought that was kind of funny.
That's good.
Well, Sarah, what did we go with?
We went with AI Foresight into our health from JPEG 84.
Thank you, JPEG. JPEG is the best.
Yay. Thanks everybody for submitting stories, suggestions. Always fun.
Yeah, thanks again to James Glazer for the super sticker on YouTube earlier. Also want to take a moment to thank everybody who supports us on Twitch. Zoe brings bacon with some bits. Those are just little things you buy that can support us, by throwing them out in the chat. Catloaf54V2 subscribed with Prime yesterday, and we got a follow from EFPT. Thanks everybody for supporting us in all the ways you can, including patreon.com/DTNS.
Yeah, and if you're looking for a fun new way to support your support or anyone else's support for DTNS, or just a gift idea. Maybe you have a coworker, colleague, they like the show, friend or family. We have dozens of ideas at dailytechnewsshow.com/store. You can get a mug, you can get a t-shirt, mouse pad with our new DTNS Live logo, which is very fun. They are good looking ways to support us and the show, and maybe just, spawn a fun conversation in the wild. Please send us your pics of yourself or your friends in our t-shirts or using our mugs if you so desire. You can also watch us. What?
I said, or even if you don't desire, just send
If
them
you
anyway.
don't,
Just,
yeah.
Well, if you don't desire,
Help
then
out.
don't. But if
Be a part of
you're
it.
like, hey, I want to see, I want you guys to see my t-shirt. That's fine. It's, it's up to you. Remember, you can watch us live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC, and you can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. We are back doing it all again tomorrow, everybody. See you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.